My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a senior financial analyst at Meridian Global Solutions in downtown Seattle. The kind of person who triple-checks spreadsheets, maintains immaculate records, and actually enjoys reconciling complex accounts. The kind of person who stays late not for recognition, but because numbers tell stories that need to be heard. That Wednesday morning started like any other. Seattle rain drumming against the office windows, the gentle hum of computers, and the familiar scent of coffee from the break room. I was reviewing the quarterly financial reports when Marcus Walsh, my direct supervisor, appeared at my desk. His usual swagger was missing, replaced by something tighter, more desperate. Sarah, my office. Now, I followed him, laptop in hand, already sensing something was wrong. Marcus's office had the best view in our department, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. But today, the blinds were drawn, casting the room in artificial shadows. "Close the door," he said, not looking up from his computer screen. I did, then took a seat across from his mahogany desk. The leather chair felt unusually cold. "We have a situation," Marcus began, his voice unnaturally calm. "The Anderson account audit revealed some discrepancies. The Anderson account, our biggest client, worth over $50 million in annual revenue. I had flagged some concerns about their numbers months ago, but Marcus had dismissed them." "What kind of discrepancies?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew. Marcus finally looked at me, his gray eyes hard as stone. $3 million worth. The room seemed to tilt slightly. $3 million. In the corporate world, that wasn't just a discrepancy. That was a career-ending catastrophe. "How?" I managed to ask. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a strange smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Funny you should ask. According to the timestamps on the transaction records, the errors occurred during your weekly review periods." My blood ran cold. I knew exactly what he was doing. "That's impossible," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I maintain detailed logs of every review. There's no way I would have missed. The records show otherwise," he cut in smoothly. "And as your supervisor, I'm offering you a choice. Take responsibility for the oversight, accept a demotion with a minor pay cut, and we all move on. Or," he spread his hands wide, "well, falsifying financial records is grounds for immediate termination. Your choice." I sat there, heart pounding but mind surprisingly clear. This was why he'd been so quick to dismiss my concerns about the Anderson account. He'd been covering his tracks, laying groundwork, probably altering timestamps on documents. But he'd made one critical mistake. "You're right about one thing," I said, standing slowly. "The records do tell the truth. All of them, including the encrypted backup logs I maintain on our secure server. The ones that show exactly who accessed those files and when. The ones that prove every alteration you made to cover up your mistakes." The color drained from Marcus's face. "You're bluffing." I smiled, the kind of smile that comes from knowing you've already won. "Check the backups, Marcus. I'll wait." His fingers flew across his keyboard, navigating through folders, his face growing paler by the second. I watched as he found them. Dozens of automated logs, each one meticulously documenting every change he'd made to the original files. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, his confidence evaporating. "We can work something out." "You're right again," I replied, gathering my laptop. "We can. I have a meeting with Linda Carter in internal audit in—" I glanced at my watch. 20 minutes. I'm sure she'll be very interested in working this out. "Sarah, wait," Marcus called as I reached the door. Think about what you're doing. I can make your life very difficult. I turned back, meeting his desperate gaze. No, Marcus. You already tried that. Now, I'm going to make your life very honest. The walk to Linda Carter's office on the executive floor felt like floating. My hands didn't shake as I knocked on her door. My voice didn't waver as I laid out the evidence. The backup logs, the original timestamps, the trail of Marcus's alterations, the attempts to frame me. Linda, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd earned her reputation as the company's ethical backbone, listened without interruption. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You understand the gravity of these accusations? She asked finally. Yes, I replied. That's why I brought proof. She nodded, then reached for her phone. Clear my afternoon, she told her assistant. And get me Gerald Thompson from legal. We're going to need him. What followed was 5 hours of intense scrutiny. Every log examined. Every timestamp verified. Every alteration traced back to its source. By the time I left the office that evening, the Seattle rain had stopped, and the truth had been uncovered. Marcus was placed on immediate administrative leave, pending investigation. I was temporarily assigned to oversee his duties, but I knew this was just the beginning. The real storm was yet to come. The next morning, walking into the office felt different. Colleagues who normally barely nodded hello now stopped to chat. My inbox was flooded with meeting requests from directors and vice presidents. Everyone wanted to touch base about the Anderson account. I handled each inquiry professionally, neither gloating nor gossiping. The numbers told their own story. I didn't need to embellish them. A week into the investigation, Linda Carter called me back to her office. This time, she wasn't alone. Gerald Thompson from Legal and James Morrison, our CFO, sat with her. Sarah, James began, his tone serious but not unkind. We've completed our initial review. The evidence is conclusive. I nodded, waiting. Marcus Walsh's employment has been terminated, Linda continued. The board is considering legal action regarding the attempted fraud. But that's not why we called you here, Gerald added. We need to discuss your future with Meridian Global. My heart skipped. Despite everything, despite the proof and the vindication, there was still a small part of me that feared corporate politics would somehow twist this against me. James leaned forward, a slight smile breaking through his professional demeanor. We're creating a new position. Director of Financial Integrity and Compliance. Full oversight of all major accounts, direct reporting to me, and a seat on the executive committee. I felt my eyes widen. And you're telling me this because we'd like to offer you the position, Linda finished. Your handling of this situation demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership and integrity we need. I sat there, letting the words sink in. Director, Executive Committee. The very position Marcus had always claimed I was too inexperienced to handle. Of course, James added, this would mean taking over Marcus's former office. I hope that won't be a problem. I thought about that office with its view of Elliott Bay. About the blinds Marcus always kept drawn. About the shadows he tried to hide in. No problem at all. I replied, I think that office could use some sunlight. The paperwork was signed by the end of the day. My new role would be announced company-wide on Monday. But as I packed up my old desk that Friday evening, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. Marcus had tried to force me to take a fall, never realizing he was actually giving me a boost. Someone had already cleared Marcus's office when I arrived Monday morning. The blinds were open, revealing a stunning view of the bay glittering under the rare Seattle sun. As I set down my box of belongings, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. Nobody likes a whistleblower. Marcus." I saved the number but didn't respond. He didn't realize that this story was far from over. He thought he'd lost his job and his reputation. He had no idea what was coming next. I sat down at my new desk, opened my laptop, and began a fresh audit of every account Marcus had ever touched. Because if there was one thing I'd learned in all this, it was that numbers don't lie. People do. And I was just getting started. I spent my first week as director methodically reviewing every account Marcus had touched during his tenure at Meridian Global. The Anderson account discrepancy hadn't felt like an isolated incident, and my instincts were screaming that there was more to uncover. Late Thursday night, as most of the office had cleared out, I found what I was looking for. Buried in the Richardson Technologies audit from 2 years ago, subtle manipulations, carefully hidden transfers, numbers that didn't quite add up. Then the Blackwood Capital reports showed similar patterns. The Martinez Group too, each instance too small to raise immediate alarms, but together they painted a disturbing picture. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. "Hope you're enjoying my office. Don't get too comfortable. Everyone has secrets." I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Linda in internal audit and Gerald in legal, then returned to my investigation. If Marcus thought he could intimidate me, he clearly hadn't learned anything from our last encounter. By Monday morning, I had compiled enough evidence to fill a banker's box. Not just accounting discrepancies, but a pattern of systematic fraud spanning nearly 4 years. The total amount made the Anderson account look like pocket change. I was preparing my report when Jessica from HR appeared at my door, looking uncomfortable. "Sarah, we've received some concerning allegations." I set down my pen. "From Marcus?" She nodded, sliding a folder across my desk. "He's claiming you accessed his personal files without authorization. Says you used them to frame him and steal his position." I opened the folder, scanning the accusations, each one more outrageous than the last. I had hacked his computer, planted false evidence, conspired with others to orchestrate his downfall. The desperation in every line was almost pathetic. "Interesting timing," I said, pulling up my secure server access logs. "Would you like to see exactly when and how I accessed every file used in the investigation? All through proper channels, all properly documented." Jessica's relief was visible. "That would be helpful. And while we're at it," I added, "I have something else you should see." I shared my latest findings: the years of fraud, the multiple accounts, the careful cover-ups. Jessica's eyes widened as she went through the evidence. "This is extensive," she managed finally. "Yes," I agreed. "And there's more. Marcus has been sending me threatening messages." I showed her the texts. "I've already forwarded them to legal, but you should probably have copies for his file." She nodded, her HR professionalism warring with obvious shock. "I'll need to escalate this immediately." "Of course," I said. "I'm heading to a meeting with James and Linda about these findings anyway. You're welcome to join us." The meeting that followed lasted 3 hours. James Morrison, our CFO, sat at the head of the conference table, his face growing grimmer with each page we reviewed. $7.8 million, he said finally. Total fraudulent manipulations across 4 years and 6 major accounts. "That we found so far," I added. "I'm still reviewing the smaller accounts." Linda Carter shook her head. "The SEC will need to be notified." already prepared that report," I said, sliding another folder forward, along with a detailed timeline of discovery and all supporting documentation. James looked at me with newfound respect. "You've been thorough." "Numbers don't lie," I replied. "People do. I just let the numbers tell their story." Gerald Thompson, who had been quietly taking notes, finally spoke up. "Marcus's allegations against you were a mistake. They opened the door for a deeper investigation that might have taken months to initiate otherwise." "He's panicking," Linda observed, "making amateur mistakes." "Speaking of mistakes," I said, pulling up my email, "you should see what just arrived." It was an email from Marcus, sent to the entire executive team, attempting to expose what he called a conspiracy against him. Attached were documents he claimed proved his innocence, except they were the very files that showed his alterations most clearly. "He just authenticated the evidence himself," Gerald said, almost admiringly. "By sending these files from his personal email, he's confirmed they're genuine." James stood up, straightening his tie. "Sarah, work with legal to prepare a full disclosure for the board. Linda, coordinate with our external auditors. We need to get ahead of this." As everyone filed out, Linda lingered behind. "You know," she said quietly, "when you first came to me about the Anderson account, I thought you were either very brave or very naive. Now I realize you were something else entirely." "Oh," I raised an eyebrow. "Prepared," she smiled. "You didn't just catch him. You built an airtight case that even his desperate flailing can't damage." The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, audits, and legal consultations. Marcus's attempts at retaliation had backfired spectacularly, drawing attention to aspects of his fraud that might have taken months to uncover otherwise. Then came Wednesday morning. I arrived at my office to find James waiting for me. "The FBI is involved now," he said without preamble. "Marcus was arrested an hour ago. Apparently, this wasn't his first corporate fraud scheme." I sat down, letting that sink in. "Other companies?" James nodded. "2 previous employers. He'd been careful, changed his methods each time. But your investigation gave them the pattern they needed." My computer pinged with a news alert. The story had broken. Meridian Global executive arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. I scanned the article, noting how it praised the company's internal controls and swift action once the fraud was discovered. "The board is pleased with how we handled this," James continued. "Particularly your role. They approved a new compliance initiative. Full department, expanded authority, increased budget." "Sounds like a lot of work," I observed. "It is," he agreed. "That's why they're promoting you again. Executive Vice President of Compliance and Risk Management. Interested?" I looked around my office, the one I'd only occupied for a few weeks, the one Marcus had tried to use to threaten me. It already felt small. "When do I start?" The following Monday, I walked into my new executive suite on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seattle, the bay sparkling under morning sun. But it wasn't the view that made me smile. It was the email from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, requesting a meeting to discuss their ongoing investigation into corporate fraud. Attached was a familiar name. Marcus's previous supervisor from his last job, the one who had given him a neutral reference despite suspicions of misconduct. The one who had helped him move on to Meridian Global, where he could continue his schemes. I opened my investigation files and began a new folder, because some stories don't end with one person's downfall. Sometimes they lead to deeper truths that need to be uncovered. Marcus thought he could threaten me with secrets, never realizing that secrets were exactly what I was best at exposing. My phone buzzed one last time. A final text from Marcus, probably sent just before his arrest. "You have no idea what you've started." I smiled, saving the message with all the others. Evidence was evidence, after all. "Actually," I said to my empty office, "I know exactly why I've started." 3 months later, I sat in my executive suite, reviewing the final report on Marcus's case. His guilty plea had opened up investigations at 5 other companies. 32 million in total fraud exposed, 18 conspirators charged, a web of corporate corruption unraveled because one person refused to take the fall. The view from my office now stretched beyond Seattle's skyline. I could see all the way to the mountains, clear and sharp against the horizon. But more importantly, I could see the future. One where numbers told their true stories, where integrity wasn't just a corporate buzzword, and where taking a stand didn't mean taking a fall. Linda stopped by that afternoon, a knowing smile on her face. "The board wants you to speak at the annual leadership conference," she said. "Share your insights on building a culture of transparency." "Interesting," I replied. "Any particular focus they want me to address?" "Just one," she grinned. "How to tell when someone's offering you a fall you should refuse." I thought about that moment in Marcus's office, when he tried to make me choose between my integrity and my career. He never understood that by refusing to fall, I'd actually learned to fly. "I think I can handle that," I said, turning to my computer to begin outlining my speech. Because some stories need to be told, not just for justice, but for change. The Seattle rain had returned, drumming against my office windows. But this time, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like applause. "My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a senior financial analyst at Meridian Global Solutions in downtown Seattle. The kind of person who triple-checks spreadsheets, maintains immaculate records, and actually enjoys reconciling complex accounts. The kind of person who stays late not for recognition, but because numbers tell stories that need to be heard." That Wednesday morning started like any other. Seattle rain drumming against the office windows, the gentle hum of computers, and the familiar scent of coffee from the break room. I was reviewing the quarterly financial reports when Marcus Walsh, my direct supervisor, appeared at my desk. His usual swagger was missing, replaced by something tighter, more desperate. "Sarah," my office. Now, I followed him, laptop in hand, already sensing something was wrong. Marcus's office had the best view in our department, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. But today, the blinds were drawn, casting the room in artificial shadows. "Close the door," he said, not looking up from his computer screen. I did, then took a seat across from his mahogany desk. The leather chair felt unusually cold. "We have a situation," Marcus began, his voice unnaturally calm. "The Anderson account audit revealed some discrepancies. The Anderson account, our biggest client, worth over $50 million in annual revenue. I had flagged some concerns about their numbers months ago, but Marcus had dismissed them." "What kind of discrepancies?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew. Marcus finally looked at me, his gray eyes hard as stone. $3 million worth. The room seemed to tilt slightly. $3 million. In the corporate world, that wasn't just a discrepancy. That was a career-ending catastrophe. "How?" I managed to ask. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a strange smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Funny you should ask. According to the timestamps on the transaction records, the errors occurred during your weekly review periods." My blood ran cold. I knew exactly what he was doing. That's impossible, I said,